Welcome to the space where creators have aligned a positive and intellectual collab of open minds. For sharing and learning from one another, it's a vibe. We do Rosa podcast on the mic. Subscribe, educators spitting bars. I guess you didn't know I'm multifaceted and humble, checking off life goals. The classroom is my comfort zone where I plant and sow seeds of knowledge, compassion, empathy, and hope. Reading is the key to unlocking your potential. Countless benefits, including cognitive and mental. Regardless of the genre, books are highly influential. Go get yours, I'll get mine. Making strides, monumental. And rock with me and get down to this new jam. With my friends, I had a very simple plan. Educate the masses through books and life lessons. It's the grand slam. I'm out. Tala Falava, and welcome to the Reads with Rosa podcast. I am so excited to introduce today's guest. He is a Foreign Service Officer with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Samoa. And most recently, he served 4.5 years as the Counsellor to the Embassy of Samoa in Tokyo, Japan. Welcome to the show, Justin Lima. Yay.
Salve, Rosa. Hey,
Man,
it's good to be here.
how are you, bro?
I'm great. I'm great, actually. It's great to be home, back in the motherland.
Yeah, oh, bro, I'm so what they say in Japan, nah, I want to come back to Samoa. It's been a while. How is your family doing? How are Lily and the girls, but also, your mom and the rest of the family.
Everyone is great. Lily and the girls adjusting well back to island life, and the family likewise is doing very well. Thanks, Rosa.
Okay, I just have to ask before I get you to do your self intro. I need to know, bro, how's the food?
Oh, I need to go on a diet because I've been 4 weeks of eating all the good Samoan food and
Bro,
putting my seafood at the top of my list.
man, I see your stories, and I'm like, bro, this guy with his showing off of his stories, it looks so good. I mean, I'm not even mad. I'm just a little bit jealous, but I'm not mad. It looks good. It must be nice.
I'll have extra for you next time, man.
Yes. I always ask my guests just to do a little bit of a self intro, shout out your people, your villages. Go ahead.
I guess uh shout out to the villages of Vaimoso, where my mom is from, and Elva'a. My dad hails from the village of Salani Falealili, and also Ulolo, which is where we currently are right now.
Nice. I can hear the dogs. What's going on?
That's the Samoan thing. There's always dogs.
Very hard. I'm just waiting for the roosters, bro. I'm just waiting for the roosters, but it might be a bit late in the evening for that. So, you know, growing up in Samoa, like, what was the Samoa that you grew up in? What was that like? Like, in reflection, like, how has that changed? Like, now.
Um, Someone born and raised. I'm very proud to be born and being able to be brought up here in Samoa. I think growing up, just a lot of family. You know what they say about takes a village to raise a child. I had a
Mm,
lot of people that were around me, cousins, family. Our big Samoan families, extended families, and all living sort of together. And yeah, so that's kind of how I grew up. My dad is dad. My dad's father was a minister with the Methodist Church. So I grew up a lot in the church, and church was a big sort of thing, as is with a lot of Samoan families. So lokamaki and things like that from young age all the way up.
mm,
That was those are my early childhood memories. So,
mm,
and how's it changed now? I think I think it's changed a lot. Just uh, things have evolved, cultures, thinking as someone slowly develops,
mm,
people's mindsets change, and so there's a lot of new positive things that I see today. And yeah, so I think we've come a long way in showing how old I am, I guess.
Dramatic. Okay. I was
Come a
thinking
long way.
about you mentioned, growing up in the church, and I wonder, like, going into the ministry, was that kind of ever in the picture for you, like becoming because I feel like, in families, when you have like a minister or ministers in your family, there's always kind
Mm.
of this expectation that one of the guys, one of the brothers will perhaps follow, you know, on that path, on that journey. Was that ever an expectation for you? Like Justin, the Fefe out?
Um, well, I think if we go back like a generation, my dad
Mm,
was the one that was sort of not the expectation, and his brothers were
ah,
kind of were. And
mm,
so which he has two brothers that ended up in the ministry, as
wow.
ministers in the Methodist Church. And my dad went and did something very different. So I think for me, I was never sort of encouraged or expected to
Mm,
go into that. Yeah, so it wasn't really something that was discussed, or
mm.
I don't know. Maybe there wasn't about it. No.
What are some memorable moments of, childhood? Like, obviously, you've mentioned being surrounded by family, but, kid memories, you know, childhood memories. What are some of those memories, or even one that you can share, about growing up in Samoa?
Oh, there's so many climbing mango trees and eating
Mm,
mangoes on while there. Ingavea was like my cousin's go-to, pastime. And
right.
the later at night it was, the better. And we would have about 30 of us just playing hide and seek, Samoan styles, just around the land. Yeah, man. So that's one of my early memories, and like one of my, the ones that we always talk about even up to now with
Mm,
the cousins and things like that. We reminisce about those times. So
that's so cool, man. So then what type of student were you at school? There's the village life, but then were you also at school surrounded by family, like cousins, or did you attend a different school? Like, what were you like at school?
um I kind of attended a different school. I think early in my childhood I attended school in New Zealand. Primary school, Tetu North Primary School, I still remember. Um, and it was just me. At the time, there was maybe a handful of um, islanders in primary school that I can remember. I was always I wasn't really a troublemaker, like, because moving into a new country, moving into new school, all I was worried about was sort of like adjusting and adapting and just being able to sort of to adapt to the new environment and things like that. So I actually just really did my schoolwork. I was into a lot of sports, and yeah, and didn't really get into a lot of trouble. Had my big band meat pies and went home.
Oh, so that's where it started. Because, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I know that you went to school in New Zealand. I just didn't realize how young you were when you went to school in New Zealand. So, that transition, um, it sounds like you were just the model student, malo lava. But yeah, I mean, you must have missed home. You must have missed, family, or you were probably with family. Yeah, what was that
Yeah.
like? What was, other than the pies, were you kinda like culture shock when you arrived in New Zealand?
To be honest, I don't remember a lot of negatives about it. A lot of it
Mm,
was, pretty. It was pretty okay. Like, I I think I think my sort of ability to just adapt was sort of transitional, and it was like semi smooth. I know I didn't speak a lot of English at the time,
mm,
and remember having this conversation. Oh, there was a I remember there was a conversation with another student, and she would tell me how to say the letter H because I would say H, and she
Right.
said, "No, it's not H, it's H." And like that really, I don't know why it really stuck to me, but we went back and forth. And anyways, but yeah, I think nothing really out of the. I mean, I was
Mm.
in Tianaju Peninsula. This is like West Side, so it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't really dramatic like you think, like you'd think. So,
So then were you a reader? Did you have access to books at home, or was it really in school, that you got access?
um, I think my mom really encouraged us to get into reading. Um, I wouldn't really go out and look for books,
Mm,
but there are certain books that I would gravitate to in the library and things like that. And of course, going to the library and just being familiarized with just different things, books on
mm.
different subjects. Um, but yeah, I think I read books just because of it was a requirement, I guess, for school. um, yeah, hmm,
Hmm.
I wasn't. I think it wasn't until later on, towards like intermediate high school, that I really sort of
Mm.
got um, reading like as a hobby, but not as
Just
part of career.
right, right. Just a side note, because you did mention that you loved sports, and I wonder, did you ever dream of being in the Manu Samoa?
Um, no, actually, I wanted to be a pro tennis player.
Well, okay, okay, okay. Didn't expect that,
So,
but please carry
so
on.
actually,
Explain.
it's it's quite funny because um, a lot of my friends in school, like they were like not Islander, so like we would like tag along to like the sports, and in fear of saying something that would be borderline not appropriate, but sports that were not traditionally. um,
You mean rich people sport, right?
no, I wasn't thinking about that. But like going to tennis on Saturday mornings rather than going other. I don't know.
To rugby and to
Anyway, oh yeah, 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 yeah.
wow, so you could have been like a pro tennis player for Samoa or something.
I highly doubt it,
No.
but okay.
No, no. Man, I never
I'll
took you as a tennis player. That's a real yeah, you got me.
I now I don't think I held a record in years.
Um, I actually forgot to ask you something because as you were mentioning church, being involved in church earlier, I wondered if you play any instruments. Or is your upbringing in the church, is that kind of where you got your voice and your singing ability from?
Absolutely not. I very very I was very very tone deaf in my early days, and I couldn't like string any notes together.
Right.
I also like just got into music like really really late actually, and the only reason why I was sort of like interested in like singing because I learned how to play the guitar.
Right.
And as I was learning to play the guitar and I learned songs, I'm like, what's the use if I can't sing anything, It was gonna be like, and just like I would just like strum music and like wouldn't have, like and at first what it's like, you can't sing and play at the same time, so like it took me like months to like try and figure out. But yeah, I didn't really maybe the odd Fa'imalia here and there. We used to have family stuff, but I was always kind of like at the back because I was like not the talent,
Mm.
kind of. But but yeah. So discovered sort of my love for music, like playing instruments and that sort of. quite later on. So,
Mm. What did you miss about Samoa when you were living in New Zealand?
um, I think family. I think when I was talking about how I used to grow up with, you grow up with these group of cousins that become your first best friends and your
Mm,
brothers and sisters, basically. So I didn't have that, and so I would always like miss that because I didn't have that in New Zealand. So I always kind of miss being around that,
mm,
and I was always sort of like um, wanting to come back just to hang out with this group of people who are so real close to me even today. So
mm. At what point, you did schooling in New Zealand, but at what point did you decide that you were going to go to university? I guess I asked because was university kind of always part of the plan? You know,
um
was that always part of like this is definitely you're going down this path, or did you kind of get to near the end of high school and realize, hey, actually, this is what I want to do?
when you talked about whether it was an expectation for me to follow down the Our Minister path
Mm,
um for university, I think that was the more of the expectation was to
mm,
go down the go to high school, go to university. And I think a lot of parents, because by then I was here in Samoa doing high school here, and I think that
oh,
was sort of the general the general expectation from a lot
mm,
of parents. And just a note coming back um, from New Zealand to Samoa, I think it was like intermediate level or just before intermediate, and then having to transition back into
right.
Samoan school, right? So, and then I remember quite clearly was like um, going into my first class um, and just being really shocked at school in Samoa at the time. Um, I perhaps um, I don't know. It was a challenge to sort of integrate into school when I came back. But the expectation for going to university, it was there, and I think the school system here sort of builds that into the
Mm,
competitive where you're ranked from first to last every year, and that sort of school system sort of it builds that expectation and it builds that. So when you get to seventh form, you
mm.
know you're expected to do further studies.
So then you came back to New Zealand and you studied at university, or did you do like a year in Samoa, or what was the?
So here you after form six, you
Mm,
go to everyone. There's no foundation or seventh form, so
right,
that year is taken into um, you take it at the National University of Samoa, which at the time they called it UPY.
right.
And so at the end of your sixth form, you'll sit an exam to see if you an entrance exam into the seventh form. So all the senior schools um, go and sit an exam to get into um, that seventh foundation level class.
Mm,
You do that year, and then you can go to then you apply for university if you're fortunate enough to get a scholarship.
right.
Um, yeah,
So did you
so
study at the University of Auckland? You did, eh? Or did you?
no. I started at AUT and
Oh,
did two
AUT.
years. Yeah, and then
Mm.
I transferred all my things over to Unitech, New Zealand, to
Oh,
finish my
nice.
in international communication management. So
Did you know at the beginning of tertiary studies that that's what you want? That was kind of the area. That was the career pathway that you wanted, or were you taking a variety of papers to kind of really test out what area you'd be interested in?
no, I think naturally I was a commerce student, so I was doing
Mm,
um, subjects like economics and accounting and things like that. You know, the traditional. um, sort of academic courses, because at the time you're either a commerce student, a science student, or an art student, and
Right.
those were the three. And then looking at what was sort of available, there's like so many things outside of that sort of scope that you could go into. But absolutely not. I had no idea what pathway I was going to get into. So, and as a sort of, all I was excited about was just to be independent and leave home and be by myself, and things like that. So, no, absolutely not. I had no idea.
Was traveling around the world, like, traveling, was that ever kind of like in the back of your mind as like something that you might want to do? The reason I ask is because obviously with your job, uh, you know, you have traveled to many places because of work. And so I wonder, um, yeah, can you, I mean, travel, was that something that was always kind of like, I want to do that?
I think I think at the time, yeah, my dad through his work also, did some travel, and we would always look forward to the goodies that came back, and
Right.
so I knew that there was travel, but I also knew at the time, travel was expensive, and we didn't, you can't just, you know, tr- on a whim pay for a ticket and go somewhere. These are like
Right.
really big expensive things to me, being able to travel, and so being able to travel past New Zealand, let alone other places, that has been sort of, you know, an amazing experience, and I'm very, very fortunate to be able to experience that.
Mm.
And it changes you. It changes your perspective. It opens up your mind, and a million other things. So,
What would someone need to do, thinking about your current role, and now just, having returned with family back home, what would someone need to do? Like if there was someone listening who is interested in kind of working for foreign affairs and trade, like what kind of qualifications or experiences would one need to kind of perhaps take that career pathway?
um, I think, um, in our ministry, or like at work, um, our teams are sort of complemented. No one is sort of like
Mm.
specialized. Like everyone has different specialties. So you can be a lawyer, you can be take economics, you can take political science, and a lot of those skills and knowledge that you learn, you can apply them to different roles, including roles within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And yeah, so I mean, this foreign affairs covers a spectrum of different areas, and having skilled economists is helpful within trade, trade part of the ministry, political science, of course, at the international um, part of the ministry. So there's no, I wouldn't say go take a specific
Mm.
course, but there are a lot of um, current papers and degrees that you can take, and the skills that you get from that you can apply any different, not limited to the ministry, but also to a lot of different areas. But the interest has to be there, and I think that's the most important for me, is that you have to
Mhm.
be interested in work and be interested in what the ministry does, and applying your skills that
Mhm.
you learned to that.
Yeah, I was just wondering, does that, like, in terms of global issues, looking at things from a global lens, are you then, do you keep up? We know that the news cycle 24/7 is always changing. Do you keep up with politics? Do you keep up with the latest news and what's happening in like different countries? Um, yeah, are you like, you know?
Definitely. Definitely, that is part of the work, and you know, like I said, just genuinely interested in those areas of what's happening globally, because a lot of these things that happen outside, we don't think that it impacts us, but it
Mm,
does. The world in the war in Ukraine, COVID, fuel prices, these all have an impact. And as small and as far away as Samoa is, we're feeling the impact. Things become expensive, things become unavailable, shortages in food, things like that. So really need to keep up with current events. I think my Twitter account for that, because that really keeps me updated on, aside from the other stuff. But a big part of the reason why I'm on Twitter a lot is just to be informed and stay informed with what's happening.
What are some challenges in your experiences? What are some challenges of the job? Um, because I imagine it doesn't things don't run smoothly all the time. So what have been some challenges that you've faced personally in your experiences?
Um, well, a lot of the, I think, just for someone in general, and I can speak also for a lot of the other Pacific Islanders, is that you have teams that are very, very small, made up of 4 to 5 people, and the areas that they cover is massive.
Mm,
And it's always a struggle to be able to, well, it's literally impossible to be able to keep in updated with every single thing. And I think that's the biggest challenge would be, I guess, the capacity, the human capacity to be able to. I mean, now it's a lot better, and Samoa is a lot better than countries like Tuvalu
mm,
or the smaller countries up in the north or Niue, who have teams of very, very few people. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is being a small team, but having to cover a large area of work.
I was wondering about uh, through your work. Um, are there particular causes that you advocate for, or that you're able to advocate for through your work, like causes that are that are close to your heart or that you're passionate about, um especially thinking about not just in Samoa but in the Pacific, like are there opportunities for you to perhaps work in certain spaces um based on interest, or causes that really kind of speak to you? And
Definitely. I think working in the foreign service, so to speak, a lot of it is about, whatever level you work at, a lot of it's about creating opportunities for
mm,
someone's, creating opportunities in different areas. And I would like to think that the work that I do at the policy level or whatever level it is, um, has that impact that reaches down to the grassroots. And I think
mm,
that's always in the back of my mind when I go into do work, and then the work that I do is whether it's adding value and whether it's impacting the right people, whether
mm,
it's impacting positively on everyday Samoans.
mm,
Um, so yeah, that's sort of what's in the what's in the back of my mind when I think about, or when I work, whether it's uh, something very macro at sort of a policy government level. But I would like it to sort of have that impact. The intention is to that it does benefit everyday Samoans, and it creates
mm,
employment opportunities. It reaches, it creates, it empowers women and children to be able to, you know, um, start businesses and participate in the economic development of the country. So I
mm,
hope that that is my thinking, I guess, around the work that I do.
mm. So interesting. So interesting. I want to pause a little bit on your work, on your your current work. And I want to talk about Japan. because you lived here for a while with your family, and what were some of the highlights of living in Japan?
Wow. We loved. I mean, living in Japan for about almost 4.5 years.
Mm,
It has probably been one of the single best experiences um, I've ever had. We've ever had. Um, it's Japan is a perfect place to um, raise kids. I think start a small family and raise
mm,
kids. It's safe. It's got basically everything that is suitable or was suitable for us at the time. And I don't think anywhere else would have been, as good as Japan was for us for the last 4 years and a bit.
mm,
So, so yeah, we thoroughly enjoyed our time there. We miss it already.
mm. You know, it's interesting when you're talking about raising children here, young children, because I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you ever watched it here, because there's a show called Old Enough, which is now actually showing it's on Netflix. But there's a show that comes on TV here, where Japanese parents are basically teaching their children like independence and responsibility from a very young age, like as young as 3 years old. So what they do is, like, for example, they'll get them to do like little chores, around the house, but then send them out with a shopping list to the local store. And they have to, like, I was wondering, because here, and I'm sure you would have seen this too, on the subway, at the train stations, you see young children with their with their school bags with the clear labels saying, young children and whatnot, getting on the train, in pairs or in threes. Like, yeah, like that type of I guess parents here in Japan, and how they teach that from a very young age. Do you think that it's something that can only happen here in Japan, or do you think that you'd want to teach your daughter's responsibility from a very young age like that? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that like really high was a highlight for us while living in Japan. And I think one of the biggest um not regrets, but things that we didn't get to do before we leave was have my eldest daughter attend, school.
Mm,
And because of COVID and everything, we didn't really want to risk it. But and it was precisely because of what you're saying, is for them to learn those skills of responsibility and learn, because I've seen how kids, um, Japanese kids, even the Japanese Samoan kids, how they
mm,
are, and I think a lot of that, you know, is learned in school. And the Japanese, the focus is on having manners and being,
mm,
responsibility and things like that, rather than straight into learning, hardcore academic things. And I think that's a really cool, and I never really thought about how important it was until
mm,
well, and I did see snippets of the Old Enough um
yeah.
show that you're talking about. And also in person on the trains, you have kids um going to school and going home by themselves.
Mm,
This is something that I want to, well, definitely, but I think Japan is sort of unique in a sense that you could probably only do it there because, you know, but, yeah, those are like some of the little things. I mean, my kids picked up a lot of, good habits
mm.
interacting with other Japanese kids while we were there. And I would, we continue to encourage that here in Samoa as well. And
So you are a father to two daughters. What are some of the joys of being a father?
oh, fatherhood is great. I enjoy it very, very much. I think the things that gives me a lot of joy right now is, as my girls are growing, because they're 2 years apart, as is just watching them develop their own personalities, and watching them develop their own, who they are and what they like, what they don't like, how they are. Because I have two daughters, one is 4, one is 2, and they're both sort of like extreme. One is very out there, sociable, and the
Mm.
other's like sort of like very not anti, but she's very stays and sticks to herself. So it's always something new. So learning something new about them every day when they come, what they like, when they decide they don't like certain
Mm.
things, and so that's a joy to experience and watch kids grow and develop like that. So I really enjoy
Um,
that.
that's so cool. I was wondering if you picked up any Japanese recipe. I mean, are you a good cook? Like, now that you're back in Samoa, have you picked up some recipes that you're kind of like testing out on your family?
Um, yeah, I think one of our suitcases was nothing but like Japanese snacks and food and stuff. that we came with. But yeah, did one of the things, like first of all, I enjoy cooking a lot. So uh, I cook a lot and things like that. Um, but Japanese food and coming to Japan was just like a whole new learning experience and experiencing different types of food and what was available um, in Japan and just experimenting was great. And Japanese food is amazing. So yeah.
um, Transitioning back to Samoa, life in Samoa, um, it must be nice to be home.
It is absolutely great to finally be home,
Mm.
and we're very content right now and happy and blessed and just to be around family. We waited
Mm.
almost 6 months for to come home, so that's a long time.
Right.
When we finally got here, it was like I, just just having that sense of being home. It's been a long time, so it's
Oh,
absolutely great.
that's awesome. I wanted to talk about, living abroad with your young family, being away from your loved ones, and then losing a loved one while you're away from home. Um, how do you, how do you go on? Like, how do you stay strong? How do you keep moving forward from that?
Um, it was it's really, I mean, living away from home, like away from your parents, as someone's naturally the one thing that I um was really scared of while when I was living in Japan was, you know, that phone call that you get in the odd hours of the night and your phone's buzzing and so that freaks me out. And I always
Mm.
tell people that call me at random hours that
Right.
your first instinct is like something's wrong, right? And so yeah, so in 2019, um, uh, I was on the receiving end of one of those phone calls, and yeah, it was a shock. It was not like something we were expecting or were preparing for like you
Mm.
would um, naturally. So I think, yeah, I'm because I'm the eldest. I in my family of four. I think I grief was there for like maybe a good 5 to 10 minutes, and then I switched into like big brother eldest mode. What's gonna happen? What's gonna do this? And I kind of just like that was that was my instant reaction. I needed to get off flight. I needed to come home, and there's like a million things going through my head at the time. So so yeah, so that really sort of um brought a lot into perspective for me. Um and and then during that time I was like, okay, thinking about being home and wanting to come home and things like that. But dealing with grief, when you come and you're sort of immersed in all this busy preparation stuff, and you don't really have time to really just let it, sink in. You have family and everyone's here and things to prep and things like that. So it wasn't really until I got back on the flight
Mm,
going back to Japan, and I was really like, oh, just everything just came.
mm,
Um, but I mean, dealing with it, I don't know. The grace of God, my family is really blessed, and yeah, it was, and I guess you don't really, um, I guess you don't really get over grief. You just learn to live with it, and it
mm,
was, always there and at the back of your head and in your memories and things like that. But my kids were my like pillars of, well, my daughter at the time, because she was I think almost 2 years old at the time.
mm,
So that was a pillar of strength that got me moving, that made me smile and kept me going throughout the whole process. So
mm. Thank you for sharing that. I was thinking about now being back home as the eldest. Do you think that, I mean, aside from work, which is another space that you move in, I was wondering about family roles and responsibilities, extended family, like the ainga. Um,
Mhm.
are you, is there expectation uh, for you to, I guess, be more involved in the extended family in terms of like perhaps taking on a mate title or titles, or do you know, like, is that kind of a natural progression or a area that you move into now that you're home, or um you're still kind of like transitioning and kind of trying to feel your way back into everything?
uh, yeah, I think extended family wise, well, my dad's side of the family, I was um uh I think fortunate. What's the word? Um, Fortunate enough to be given a tight title. I think 2016. I think.
Right, so you've already been bestowed with a title.
Anifalen,
Okay.
that's my dad's village.
Mm,
Um, and and I think we have this, and then also my sister, on my mom's side is has a Matai title. Um, here in Vaimoso. Um,
mm,
but as part of um, the extended family, it was never sort of something, having a Matai title was never something that I, never, to me, wasn't something that determined your service to your family,
mm,
or it just, we all serve our families in different ways. um, and having a Matai title for me was, it didn't really determine whether or not I
mm,
would this way or that way. Naturally, I would like to think that, even if you didn't have a Matai title, you would have that sense of service and for extended families. But it was never something that I thought I needed to have to be able to. I mean,
mm.
yeah.
All good. So what are some goals that you've yet to achieve? Like what are some dreams that you're still chasing? Um, you know,
Well, now that there's being back now, like everything's coming all at once. I'm uh, I keep having this conversation with my friends and my family. It's like, wow, you know, I'm I'm a father now. I'm a husband, and I'm not the single spur of the moment, spontaneous, making decisions and things like that for myself only kind of thing. And that kind of thinking sort of like different now, and it changes your whole mentality. Like, and so thinking about goals and futures for myself, where I would need to factor in, other people, has been sort of on my mind a lot lately. And I think, the normal goals of um, settling here, settling down properly here in Samoa, and putting down some semi-permanent roots for
Mm,
now, and just organizing ourselves. I never thought, I didn't click until I got on a plane, like looking at schools and looking for, all of these things that involve children. It's crazy, but that's what fatherhood, I guess, does.
mm,
It changes your priorities. It rearranges your priorities.
mm,
Um, and so, yeah, that's the big sort of. But yeah, particularly, so goals would just be to settle, put in some semi-permanent roots
mm.
here for now, and I think, yeah, that's number one right now, is organizing ourselves now that we're back home. So,
How do you look after yourself? Generally, like, obviously, with work, with family, um, as a father, how do you take time to kind of really take care of your health and your well-being, your mental health? Which I know it's a funny question to ask. I mean, I ask all my guests because they're usually very busy people, and obviously in your job you are a busy person, but you're still in transition mode, so it's kind of weird to ask you. But so I say, in general, how do you take care of yourself?
um, I think when you get to a point where you know yourself, your body, and you know yourself quite well and what it needs, that when you get to a stage where you're, I guess, where you're overstressed or you're about to burn out, or things like that, for me, I like to just put everything down, take a step back, and then do something totally random, like go to the beach, or take my kids to the park, or something like that. But always, it's really important sort of to just take a step back and sort of um, recharge, whatever it is that you need to do to recharge, whether it's go for a run or um, go to the park. But the important thing is to just take a step back for a bit, because 90% of the time when you get back to it, you're more likely to be less stressed, and you're able to you know add value, I guess, to whatever it is that you're doing.
Solid,
Balance, I
solid.
guess.
So, in terms of reading and book recommendations, I know I asked you a little bit at the start, were you a reader and whatnot? So thinking now, years later, as an adult, do you get an opportunity to read with your girls? Are you someone who buys books for them? Are you a reader? What's the situation?
um, I probably struggle with this one, but so as I said, I got into reading really, really late. Well, not really late, but like reading sort of like um later on in school, and I I read a lot of, like, classic, like, you have the
Yes.
encyclopedia stories, and so when we got into reading, we got through a lot of the encyclopedia um stories and things like that. So the classic fairy tale stories I know
Right.
quite well, and so now that makes me a really good storyteller to my kids because
Okay.
stories, right? So so I read to them, and I do encourage and buy them English books, which kind of struggle to get while in Japan, but
Mm,
they love hearing stories, and they love when you're um telling them stories, and I would improvise and tell you know random stories to them, and they would like hang on every word. And what's funny about my girls is that one is very sort of emotional when it comes to storytelling, and the other one is like just laughs and doesn't care. So you're telling something, the same story, and having two really different reactions to it is quite funny. But yeah, so now that we're home, I think um, Nana's taken over the
right.
storytelling, so that's good. So,
Yeah, I keep seeing your sister tweet that she can't wait to get home and meet your younger daughter. She's just met them through FaceTime,
exactly.
right? Do you have a book recommendation? Just off the top of your head, is there one book that that you would recommend to anyone who's listening or watching the show?
And my readings was based on what my dad likes to read, so we have
Mm,
like politically, legally inspired books. So like John Grisham,
mm,
The Archer, Mario Puzo. Those are some of the first books that I started reading. But I think more recently I tried to see. I got some book recommendations of your Rosa. Um,
mhm.
read a couple of good books up there.
Cool.
Um, was- I think not too far back, but just the what's his name? The guy that does the it escapes my tongue. Um, he does the Kite Runner and A Thousand Splendid
Oh,
Suns.
yes. I've got the book. Not here. I know
Okay.
who. I know who you're talking about, and he does the Splendid Sons as well. Um,
Orsini. Yeah, that's the guy. So I stumbled across those books by accident, really.
mm,
I saw someone tweet it, and I went and sort of downloaded it. And I think that book for me was just provided a lot of different perspective from my normal sort of traditional thinking, and I never really um, understood um,
mm,
a book being told from that perspective, such as someone living in Afghanistan, or what it's like. You don't really understand it, and
mm,
and I think that book captivated me in a sense that it provided a lot of perspective for me and thinking. And I think this takes me back to the whole discussion about traveling, how it sort of opens your perspective into. Then after reading that, you have all these um, other questions that come, and it does change your thinking in a sense, I think.
mm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, all three books are good, but I think the Kite Runner is my favorite.
Nice.
Um, yeah, I read very boring reports these days, and so that what is making up a lot of my reading literature right now. So
Mm.
um,
Okay, okay. Um, that's all good. And I guess we're at the part of the show where I kind of ask the guest to really just kind of like round off the show with some words of wisdom, words of encouragement. Just and it could be related to work or just life advice that you might have from the perspective of a father, perhaps. So I'll give you a moment. I'll give you that opportunity to do that in a moment. But I really just before we wrap up, bro, I am so grateful to you. You know, I know we've been trying to set a time and organize this, and especially being in transition from Japan, going back home to Samoa. So we finally had this chance to sit down. Bro, Justin, I appreciate you so much. And I'm so glad that you guys are transitioning back home and settling back in, and that you're now surrounded with your family. That's super cool, bro. I really just want to wish you just all the best with work, as you pick up and continue in your job and your roles and responsibility in the ministry. I also just want to send my love to Lily and the girls. Much love to all of you. Yeah, and just, lots of blessings for the remainder of the year and any plans that you guys have. So, yeah, thank you for always supporting the show. I appreciate that too. So, I would just hand it over to you just to kind of wrap us up. Yeah.
All right. Thanks very much, Rosa. Likewise, this experience has been amazing. I'm very sort of, I don't know, like to say that I'm an introvert and I shy away from like live podcasts like this. But I followed when you first started your first video, and coming from there, you're at like 50 plus now, and there's always something for for me when I go through some of your podcasts, and whether it's words of wisdom or whether it's someone sharing a particular experience that resonates with me, and I think you've done a really good job at inspiring and putting your podcast guests out there. And I think and I hope that this and our exchange could also um, add some value to someone. If one person can take a positive, or if I can inspire one person through this interview, then that's I think this has been a success. And I think that leads me to, I guess, some words of wisdom. um, I don't know, but just today I was thinking about, who we surround ourselves with, and anything that I sort of go into, whether it's a project, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a friendship, and always at the back of my head is like, you know, whether you're adding value. Am I adding value to this situation? Is this person adding value to me? And recognizing that, because there are many times where we spend a lot of our time on things, and you really sort of step back and say, hey, am I adding to this, or am I making it worse? Am I building this a building block, adding it to this person, or this situation, or am I sort of um, you know am I a disadvantage or a liability towards that? So in everything I do, I think it's important to see the particular part or element that you can add value, and I think everyone can add value in any situation, and I think that having that mentality, I guess, creates um, you know uh, positivity and progress. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I look forward to the to watching the final version. But that was thoroughly enjoyable. And again, I also send aloha and love, from all the way from here to Samoa. Stay safe, and keep up the good work. So